Howdy folks. In this video, we look at some reasons why you should consider PowerApps over the free out-of-the-box Dynamics 365 CE mobile app. So I'm going to open the Dynamics 365 app on my phone. I click the icon, and when it loads, it typically brings up a dashboard that has a bunch of components on it. It may be a visualization, it may be views. So here we can see that it has a bunch of charts, it has the relationship assistant, and so many other things. I can also go to a different dashboard where I may find something more relevant to me. So here we are looking at my activities, my open opportunities, my open leads. Now notice how I have to keep scrolling in order to find something that I'm actually looking for. And in this case, I may be looking for my active accounts, which I reached with like 3 to 4 scrolls. As a traveling user, as a traveling salesperson, let's say, what I really want is the address. And why do I need the address? Because I need driving directions. So my very ideal and perfect experience would be just clicking this record and it opening Google Maps with driving directions from my current location to this address right here. But with Dynamics, that does not really happen. It can show me the address of the location, right? So here you can see that for each company, we have the address listed. But then if I click it, it doesn't really do anything. Instead, it takes me to the details form from where I have to look at the address, which is essentially text. So now there are two things I can do. One, I can either memorize it so that when I open Google Maps, I know what to type, or I can copy the street one line. And that in itself is an ordeal because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So here I'm going to just select it and copy it. Now my next step would be minimize it, open Google Maps, and now either type it or paste it there. So you can see that it remembers the address that I copied. So now from here I can say directions and now tell me how to drive there. So that whole experience takes a lot of clicks, a lot of swipes, a lot of memorization, maybe some fumbling around with the copy paste settings, etc. Now let's look at how this same experience is achieved in a Power App. So in this next step, I will open the Power App that I have. It's just a demo app, but this app is meant to be very, very specific to the user who is using it. So here, let me just download the newer version first. So here you'll notice that there are essentially two things happening. One, there is some level of metrics that are being displayed on the top, and it's very quick. It's meant to be quick. It's meant to be super relevant to me, where I can see that, oh, 3 new work orders have been assigned this week to me, and I have made 27 calls this week already, which is an increase of 12% over the last week or last month or something like that, right? So again, just in one quick glance, I know how I am doing, what kind of workload I have, etc. And then also, here's a list of, it can be either accounts or leads or work orders and what have you, from where I can get a sense of what kind of work I need to do and where I have to do those. So you can see I'm replacing a broken ST2234, I'm doing an inspection, I'm installing another part. So there's that very specific information and who the customer is. There's customer names as well. But then this is where it gets a little interesting, because now I am going to get driving directions for each of these locations, right? So instead of going inside each record and looking at the address and memorizing it perhaps, all I do is I click the car icon. Okay, so for example, for Peter Buck, if I click the car icon, it just opens Google Maps and gives me driving directions from my current location to that person's address. So you can see how so many clicks, so many swipes, so many scrolls were eliminated, and it gave me exactly what I wanted with just one click. let's look at another experience. And this one's about activity tracking. So going back to my dynamics, I'm going to go to the same account where I was earlier. Now, if I were to make a phone call to this account, um, I go down to where the number is, right? So I have the number, I have the email here. And let's say I have to make a phone call. So I click the phone button here. And what it does is it dials the number. So if I click the call button, it will dial the number. But also notice in the background, it gives me a quick create phone call form, which is really nice. What this means is that once I finish my call, I can just come back here and enter my notes, what the phone call was about. So enter all my notes here and then click save. So that is kind of nice. But then let's look at what happens when we do email. So if I click the email button, it opens the Outlook app or the default email app that you may have. But then it doesn't really track it, right? So it doesn't track the email automatically. In order for me to track it, I have to manually, do the whole set regarding thing, which again will take probably a few clicks and swipes. And if I have to do this for practically every activity, it can become a little cumbersome and frustrating for me to go through this whole ordeal. Let's see what happens in PowerApps. Can we make this experience much easier and much more smoother? So I go into PowerApps now. I click the PowerApps app, and once it loads, so here's what we'll do. If I want to call any of these people, so one thing I can do is I can click the phone button, right? And just like the Dynamics app, it calls the number. Okay, so I can click call the number and it dials it. But then also I have a very specific screen now with just the most relevant fields. Okay, so you can see that the call is with Burgess Towns and it's regarding a specific work order or an account or a lead, etc. That I made this phone call for. And then all I have to do is enter my phone call notes here and save it. Similarly, if I go back and if I want to send Burgess an email and I also want to track it, I can do that because since we are building a Canvas app here, we can do whatever we want. So we can build this whole tracking and regarding mechanism into it. So when I send an email, it brings me to another screen where it already knows who this email is going to, and then also what is it regarding. So all those kinds of things can be done with PowerApps where you don't have to worry about manually tracking emails, manually tracking appointments, etc. Also, you will see that there's an SMS button here. So PowerApps gives us the ability to send text messages as well. If I click this button here, so right now it just opens the native SMS app on my phone and then it lets me type whatever I want and send it to the customer. Now what's happening here is that we are sending this message from my phone as me, but we can also use some of the SMS connectors in PowerApps so that the message comes from a very specific number, maybe the company phone number, and also it will be easier to track those SMS messages as well in your Dynamics or CDS or any other source that you may have. So these were two specific examples which are very, very relevant to traveling users, whether salespeople, technicians, inspectors, whoever. And these are the things that they always look for. And if they don't find these features, then in many, many cases, they actually refuse to use the solution. So you decide, what are the features that you think are very important to your users? Are they looking for something quick, or are they okay with, going through all the details and performing all the actions manually, etc. And then you can find out what would be the most suitable solution for them. It can be either Dynamics, it can be PowerApps as well. But in many cases, the users are just looking for something so specific that PowerApps usually becomes the more suitable choice for them. Hope this made sense. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.